bouquet.
Oh, gentlemen, I heard a lovely lady. What say you, Wickham? Ribbons for a pretty lady?
I'm a bit hard up until I get my commission, Denny. Perhaps you can see a way through to help your fellow soldier out. Eh?
Early one morning, just as the sun was rising, I heard a maid sing in the valley below. Oh, don't deceive me, oh, never leave me. How could you lose a poor maiden so?
Miss Bennet, I beg that you do not suspicion any hint of offense just now in my wishing to see your daughters soon married.
I am sure you are sincere. I wish the same good fortune also on the destitute.
You allude perhaps to the fate of your husband's estate.
I do indeed. How dreadful it is to have their own fortune entailed away from them.
I assure you, ma'am, I'm very sensible to the hardships of my fair cousins. It is, in fact, my reason for seeking this meeting of Bonbon. You see, my most esteemed patroness, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, advised me most splendidly. During my last visit to Rosie, she said,
Mr. Collins, you must marry. Choose properly. Let her be an active, useful sort of person. Not brought up high, but able to make a small income go a good way. When you have found such a woman, bring her to Huntsman Parsonage, and I will visit her to give you my approval.
now allow me to say, Miss Bennet, that I take Lady Catherine de Bourgh's generous contribution as among the best in my power to offer your daughters. For who else could allow me?
Mr. Collins, do you mean to say that you're planning to make amends to the state of entails too? Marry one of my daughters?
Why, of course! Oh, did I not make that plain? I do always hope to be succinct.
Oh, Mr. Collins!
I thought it a most excellent plan, and her ladyship quite agreed. So I came to Longbourn, meaning to choose one of your elegant daughters. If, of course, I found them as beautiful as they are commonly reported. Upon seeing them, ma'am, I'm decided. The eldest girl.
Jane?
A lovely choice, unequaled beauty, and in the interest of seniority, don't you agree?
Mr. Collins, your taste is your credit, sir. Though I must tell you, we have reason to very soon expect her to be engaged to Mr. Bingley of Netherfield.
Oh!
However, if I may suggest, Elizabeth.
Your second born.
Indeed, second only to Jane in birth and beauty.
Sorry, madam.
This is such an old device, Jeremiah Clark. Have you nothing newer, written in perhaps the last 100 years or so? Something with which I could accompany myself on the pianoforte?
I have many new tunes, miss. I don't request for that song from that gentleman.
Which one? Mamma, it seems, is stoking the fire, for the man she could not bear to speak of earlier is now her dearest companion. The nature of her latest scheme, I can hardly guess. Though I have my suspicions. These cares will soon fade, however, as we have just arrived in Meryton, and Captain Denny is now introducing us to
My good friend, George Wickham.
At your service, my ladies.
Why, Denny, where have you been hiding so tall? A gentleman from our acquaintance?
Denny fears of losing you as a dancing partner, Lydia.
No, indeed, Miss Bennet, I assure you. Wickham has just arrived from town.
From London, sir.
Indeed.
Isn't it a shame he doesn't follow in the offices of his friends, Kitty? He would look so much handsomer in a red coat.
Aye, then Denny and Carter might welcome him with a parade of sabers and trumpets. Kitty, please. Mr. Wickham, please do excuse my younger sister's impertinence. They have eyes for little else than the men of the regiment these days.
Not at all, Miss Bennet. In fact, your sisters will soon have their wish. I have just this morning accepted a commission into the office accord.
Oh, there, Lydia. He'll be a soldier after all. Why don't you all show Mr. Collins the way of the shops?
Lizzie!
He does so wish to become more acquainted with Meryton.
You are very generous in your attentions to me, Miss Elizabeth, but I promise I will not be gone from your side a moment longer than necessary.
Do take your time, Mr. Collins.
Mr. Collins is a quiet, courteous fellow, Miss Bennet. Is he not the new vicar at Hunsford Parsonage?
Yes, are you at all familiar with it?
Only with its benefactors.
Not Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
Yes, you're a queen.
No, though I believe we may soon have our fill of her influence through our esteemed guest. Forgive my rudeness. I fear we've all made a rather ridiculous first impression.
Nothing of the kind. In fact, I find your relations to be quite charming, Miss Bennet. And believe me, I consider myself fortunate enough to have been both raised in privilege and reduced to poverty. Though hard, my life has afforded me to make friends based on the merits of their character rather than those of their relations.
Can such a man exist?
Oh God! You're just part of your health, Miss Bennet.
You're too kind, Mr. Bailey.
Are you quite recovered from your ordeal, dear Jane? I confess it warms my heart to see you. You certainly would not be out in the country air had you not been feeling quite well.
Well, I assure you.
There now, you see, Jane, how attentive is your friend. Mr. Bingley, allow me to introduce my husband's cousin and our guest, Mr. Collins.
Miss Bennet, I hope that you... Mr. Darcy?
Extraordinary.
I am afraid, Miss Bennet, it could not have possibly escaped your notice that very cold meeting just now.
Indeed, I would not wish to pry.
Are you much acquainted with Mr. Darcy?
As much as I ever wished to be. I have spent 6 days in the same house as him. Far too long to spend with so disagreeable a person.
I have no right to give my opinion. I have known him far too long to be a fair judge. Has Mr. Darcy been in Hertfordshire long?
About a month.
And is he much thought of?
Mr. Wickham, he is not at all liked in hardly any house save for Netherfield. Everyone is disgusted by his pride.
I cannot pretend to be sorry to hear it. I have been a disappointed man, Miss Bennet. A military life was not what I was intended for. Mr. Darcy has done me a terrible disservice.
Lizzie! Mr. Bingley has officially named the day of the ball. We are all invited to Netherfield next Tuesday!
And he's promised to invite all the officers. Mr. Wickham, we do hope to see you there.
They depend on Miss Bennet.
Do you dance, Mr. Wickham?
Most readily.
See, Penny, you'll have a rival after all.
Going to outshine us then, eh, Wickham?
Mr. Bingley, we are very favored with your personal invitation, and you're so kind as to include Mr. Collins as well. Is he not, Lizzie?
Indeed, Mamma. Though I wonder, do you not fear rebuke from the Archbishop, sir? Is it appropriate for a clergyman to attend a ball?
I feel that a ball hosted by a young man of good character can have no evil tendencies.
But would Lady Catherine approve?
Dearest cousin, I am so far removed from dancing myself that I hope to be honored with the hands of all my fair cousins. In fact, I take this opportunity to solicit yours, Miss Elizabeth, for the first 2 dances.
Promised to Mr. Collins by my own mother? I so wish to have been engaged by Mr. Wickham for those dances. Confess the thought entered my mind as rapidly as it would have Lydia's. Everything he said was agreeable. Such manners and ease of expression, why, even the dullest topic he rendered interesting. Indeed, my thoughts of dancing a great deal with Mr. Wickham were surpassed only by my desire to learn what terrible disservice was wrought upon him by Mr. Darcy.
You look lovely this evening, Miss Bennet.
Thank you for Usher Wilbur. Although I am not part of the therapist corps, I do understand that physical exercise, the accompaniment of a pianoforte and strings, can be beneficial to the complexion.
Well, then you must practice a great deal.
Not as much as you might think. My books take up a great deal of my time, and the music, of course. 400 IQ.
I thank you for
It was my pleasure, Mr. Collins.
I feel that you were very excellently matched on the dance floor.
Quite right. However,
I wonder if I could take this time...
Miss Elizabeth, would you favor me with your hand for the next 2 dances?
Thank you, Mr. Wickham. I would be delighted. Excuse me, Mr. Collins. Thank you.
I must confess, the gesture is wholly selfish. I've been hoping for a dance with you since our walk together in Meryton.
So I've been hoping for the chance of speaking with you.
Forgive me, Miss Elizabeth, but you are both charming and transparent. You were no doubt curious as to the nature of my acquaintance with Mr. Darcy.
I confess I've thought of little else. It's impossible to imagine how he's been the means of your ruin.
He wasn't always like this. My father had the old management of Mr. Darcy's estate.
His steward.
Precisely. You see, Darcy and I spent the better part of our youth together. I dare say we were once as brothers. This surprises you.
How can it not?
His father, the late Mr. Darcy, was my godfather, and upon my own father's death, promised to provide for me. He intended for me a living and a parish as soon as it became available.
And did he?
No, he died before one became vacant, to which Mr. Darcy ignored his father's wishes and gave the living which I had to have had to another man. I was left penniless.
Heavens! How can Mr. Darcy dishonor his father's will like that?
There was such informality in the terms of it. The law was not in my favor.
This is quite shocking. He deserves to be publicly disgraced.
Sometime he will be. But it shall not be by me. Till I can forget the father, I can never defy or expose the son.
Not got him so bad as this. What could have induced him to behave so cruelly?
I believe Darcy grew jealous. His father, the late Mr. Darcy, was uncommonly attached to me, though I was but a poor son of a steward. Had the late Mr. Darcy liked me less, his son would have both be better.
Such malicious revenge, such injustice. You no wonder his intimacy with Mr. Bingley seems so amiable. He cannot know what Mr. Darcy is.
Probably not. Darcy can choose where he pleases. Among those he considers equals, he's a very different man.
Pardon me, Miss Elizabeth, but might I have a word with Wickham?
Miss Eliza, your sister has been telling me how much you favored George Wickham. Though I'm sure he failed to mention that he was the son of old Wickham, the late Mr. Darcy's overseer.
Yes, he informed me of that himself.
Did he? Well, let me inform you as a friend. Do not trust in all his assertions. I do not know the particulars, but I do know that Mr. George Wickham treated Mr. Darcy in a most infamous manner.
Did he?
I pity you, Miss Eliza, for this discovery of your favorite's guilt. But really, considering his lineage, one cannot expect any better.
By your account, his guilt and his lineage appear to be the same. You accuse him of nothing worse than being the son of Mr. Darcy's overseer, a relation he proudly acknowledged.
I beg your pardon. My interference was kindly meant.
Miss Bennet, I am afraid I've been obliged to go to town on urgent business. I must painfully withdraw our invitation to dance.
Why?
I'm sorry, Miss Elizabeth, but I cannot imagine that his business would have called him away just now if it were not for a certain gentleman.
Charlotte! Charlotte, I have much to tell you.
We have been most highly gratified, my dear sir. Such very superior dancing is not often seen. It is evident that you belong in the highest of society.
Thank you, Lady Lucas.
Allow me to say that your fair partner, Miss Bingley, did not disgrace you, and I must hope to have the pleasure often repeated, especially when a certain desirable event shall take place.
Such a well-suited couple, wouldn't you agree? Well, congratulations will then flow in.
How astonishing! For Mr. Wickham to endure such unkindness. I wonder that they might both have been deceived in some way. Perhaps there was some misrepresentation.
Misrepresentation? Charlotte, how can you think of defending him?
My dearest Lizzie, do consider it what a disgraceful light such an event must place Mr. Darcy. To be treating his father's godson in such a way? It is impossible. No man who so clearly values his character and reputation can be capable of it. And what of Mr. Bingley? Can his most intimate friend be so deceived in him?
I can more easily believe Mr. Bingley's being deceived than Mr. Wickham inventing such a history.
It is difficult indeed. Most distressing. One does not know what to think.
Beg your pardon. One knows exactly what to think.
Miss Bennet, would you do me the honor of joining me in the next dance?
Mr. Darcy, I can think of no one.
Don't be a simpleton, Lizzie. You surely do not know the whole of it. Do not let your fancy for Wickham lead you to embarrass a man of 10 times his worth.
Thank you, Mr. Darcy. I would be delighted. I do so enjoy this dance. It's your turn to say something, Mr. Darcy.
talk by rules out when you're dancing?
Usually. Though we may arrange it so we may say as little as possible.
Are you quite sure you're recovered, Elizabeth? You had barely any restless night. I've scarce uttered 2 words this morning.
Forgive me, Charlotte. I fear I've been a dreadful guest.
Nonsense, Lizzie. Only I worry at such a persistent headache. Your father would never forgive me if you returned to Longbourn today unwell.
Indeed, he would not, but I promise I'm quite well.
If you insist, then, come. We shall return to the parsonage where Colonel Fitzwilliam and Mr. Darcy take their leave. Now I'm sure.
Charlotte, that is, would you mind so terribly if I do so enjoy the lanes here at Rosings. I think I might like to take the a longer way back.
You have no wish of seeing Mr. Darcy, do you? Oh, Lizzie, I do wish you confided me about his visit last night. I confess I've not known you to shout so. Was he cruel to you?
No, of course not. We just had a disagreement.
About? Very well. I shan't press the matter. I will return alone and make your farewells. You need not fear a repeat encounter.
You're too good a friend, Mrs. Collins. I fear I've disappointed you.
Of course not. How could you disappoint anyone?
If only she knew. Charlotte is not wrong, of course. Had not, in fact, recovered from last night's headache. To think that I should have received an offer of marriage from Mr. Darcy. That he should have been in love with me. Suppose I would feel some pity for having rejected him with such, what did he say, incivility, but his pride, such abominable pride. No sympathy for what he did to Jane, no denial of his treatment of Wickham. Thank heaven for Charlotte. With a bit of luck, I can take my leave of Hunsford without...
I've been walking the grounds some time in the hope of meeting you. Please do me the honor of reading this letter.
I should discard this immediately. I should have turned away from the grove before he even saw me. Oh, I assure you, this is due to only the strongest of curiosity.
Be not alarmed, madam, on receiving this letter, for you need not fear any renewal of those offers which were last night so disgusting to you. But you charged me with 2 very grave offenses. The first, that I detached Mr. Bingley from your sister, and second, that I was the sole means of ruining George Wickham. If in this explanation I relate feelings which are offensive to you, I beg in advance for your forgiveness. But the severity of the charges demands that it must be done, else I would have spared you the unpleasantness entirely. Not long been in Herefordshire, when I realized Bingley preferred your sister.
I do hope to see you very soon, Miss Bennet. Perhaps the next time you walk through Meryton.
I would like that, Mr. Bingley.
But it was not until the Netherfield ball that I became aware of the general expectation in town of their probable engagement.
And I must hope to have the pleasure often repeated, especially when a certain desirable event shall take place.
Such a well-suited couple. When you agree, well, congratulations will then flow in.
From this moment, I began to observe your sister's behavior attentively. Her look and manners were cheerful and engaging, but without any symptom of deep affection.
Without any symptom?
The quietness of her expression, the polite civility of her manner convinced me that her heart was not as violently engaged as my friend's.
Bingley likes his sister undoubtedly. He may never do more than like her if she does not help him on. She must leave him and no doubt of her affections. Mr. Bingley may lose interest if she insists on getting her temper.
All of this seduced me to preserve safety from what I truly believe to be a most unhappy marriage. As for Mr. Wickham, I fear I must lay before you the whole history. He was indeed my father's godson and my boyhood companion. His manners with my father were easy and engaging, but from my father he was careful to guard his true character. I'm sure you've been informed that Mr. Wickham was promised a parish living, and
Darcy, I am not so insensitive to the old man's wishes, but I have no desire of having the run of the church. You know I'm not suited to be a clergyman.
Certainly not.
However, in lieu of taking orders, there is a matter of compensation. If I'm not to accept a living, should I not begin with some of equal value?
Your price?
What say you to £3,000?
3,000? This cannot be. This must be false.
I granted Wickham's request on the grounds that he resigned all claims to the church. But scarcely 2 years later.
I have been a disappointed man, Mr. Bennett. I feel as I have made a grand mistake. Would you please apply me to the Archbishop and recommend me?
How much is your debt?
Well, let us just say, my circumstances are bad.
I had no difficulty believing it, but you can hardly blame me for refusing him or my resisting his next 5 requests.
5?
He no doubt abused my character in your society as boldly as he now does in my own.
I have been a disappointed man, Miss Bennett. A military life was not what I was intended for. Mr. Darcy has done me a terrible disservice.
After this, our connection seemed entirely dissolved. So last summer, he was most painfully reintroduced to my family's acquaintance. My sister, Georgiana, whose 10 years my junior, was attending school at Ramsgate. Unbeknownst to myself, Wickham followed her there.
Why, sweet Georgiana Darcy, you have blossomed overnight.
Mr. Wickham!
She was then but 15, and was persuaded to believe herself in love and to consent to an elopement.
You know, my brother and cousin did warn me to be on my guard for fortune hunters in Ramsgate, George.
Why? Miss Darcy, you know we too well to suspicion me of that. We grew up together, you and I. Born in poverty and raised in privilege. You know how much I desire to make friends based on the merits of the character rather than those of the relations.
A day or two before the event, I joined them unexpectedly.
Brother!
Unable to grieve or offend her me, Georgiana acknowledged the truth of the affair. You may imagine what I felt and how I acted. Wickham's chief motive was undoubtedly my sister's fortune, a sum of 30,000 pounds. But I cannot doubt that he also sought revenge upon me. Had this elopement taken place, had he succeeded in disgracing my sister, his revenge would have been complete. This, madam, is a faithful narrative of every event concerning Mr. Wickham. I know not what lies he has told you, but detection could not be in your power, for you are too good a person to suspicion those you would call friend. I hope you'll believe me. But if your hatred of me prevents it, I invite you to appeal to Colonel Fitzwilliam for confirmation, as he knows every particular. I will only add, God bless you.
I'm an absolute fool. Oh, to think, only 2 months since I went away. I had no idea being married till I came back again, but what good fun it was! Oh, my dear girl! Mama, did people hear about now I am married? I was afraid they might not, so I took off my glove and rolled down the window in the carriage as we drove through Longbourn. Oh, Mr. Bennett, isn't it wonderful to have a daughter married? And the youngest of them all.
And Mr. Wickham, how handsome you look in a red coat.
Is he not charming, Mama? My sisters must all go to Brighton. That is the place to get husbands. I promise I will have them all have husbands before the autumn is over. Thank you for my share of the favor, but I don't particularly like your way of getting husbands.
Well, shall we all retire to the parlor for tea?
Ah, Jane, you must go lower. I'm a married woman now. What a coach ride that must have been. Oh, what sorrows you must have suffered.
you that, Lizzie. Who should suffer but myself?
You mustn't be so harsh upon yourself.
No, Lizzie. Let me feel how much I've been to blame. I am not afraid of being overwhelmed by my guilt. It will pass soon enough. And Lizzie, I promise I bear you no resentment for the advice you gave me in July, which, considering the event, shows some greatness of mine, my dear.
Papa, really?
Anyway, the thing is done. And the terms so astonishingly convenient upon myself.
The terms, sir?
Yes, all that is left of me now is to ensure Lydia's equal share of her inheritance.
Impossible.
Yes, Lizzie. Those are my sentiments exactly.
But his gaming, all of Wickham's debts. How can he have married Lydia in town without first paying off all his creditors?
And now we come to the point, Lizzie. There are two things I want very much to know. One is how much money your Uncle Gardner must have laid down to bring this farcical elopement about. And the other, how am I ever to repay him?
Miss Elizabeth,
Mr. Wickham?
I'm afraid I interrupt your solitude.
You do. But the interruption need not be unwelcome.
I should be sorry if you'd wear. I do so hope we are still friends.
We are not, Mr. Wickham. We are brother and sister now.
Indeed, sister. I understood from Miss Gardner that you were recently in Derbyshire with your aunt.
I was.
I view the pleasure. I'm afraid my new regiment will prevent from getting any nearer to Derbyshire in the coming months than Newcastle.
How unfortunate.
Did you happen to visit the village of Kimpton on your travels?
We might have, Mr. Wickham, but our trip was curtailed.
I only mention it because it is a living which I ought to have had. A most delightful place, Kimpton. Excellent parsonage. A warm parish.
Oh, and how would you have liked making sermons, Mr. Wickham?
Exceedingly well. It would have been just a thing for me.
Because I have heard on good authority that there was a time when sermon making was not so palatable to you, as it seems at present, that you actually declared your resolution against taking orders and were reimbursed accordingly.
Yes. Well.
George! George, go and see Mama in the parlor. She's in need of your talents at the card table. Lizzie, why have you not come to join us? You missed the account of our wedding. Are you not curious about the affair?
Not at all.
You're so strange, but I must tell you how one. You see, we were married at St. Clement's, and we were all supposed to be there at 11 o'clock. My uncle was going to take us, and the others were to meet us by the church. Well, Monday morning rolled around, and I was in such a fuss.
This explanation went on for above 12 minutes.
I had no idea that I was so worried that the groomsman might never show, and if he didn't, I knew that I would have an able substitute in Mr. Darcy.
Mr. Darcy?
Yes, Mr. Darcy.
Mr. Darcy? At your wedding?
Yes, Mr. Darcy. At my wedding. He was the one that had found us in London. He had also brought Wickham to the church. Who else was to pay for the vicar and the flowers? Needless to say, Wickham's debts in London, they needed settling before we came back to right